We're going to look now at the famous or infamous story of the fall of mankind. It's presented in a very simple story told in Genesis chapter 3. We'll study it in the original Hebrew, preserved for us over thousands of years. I should say at the outset that these verses, I see them as an account of what has happened to mankind as a whole and to each of us individually. I don't take it as a literal story of what happened to two individuals called Adam and Eve. I don't state this dogmatically with 100% certainty. It's surely impossible for anyone to be 100% certain about how this was intended to be taken. But to me, the balance of probability is that it was not intended to be taken literally. Briefly, for these reasons. First, the most common meaning of the Hebrew word Adam, is man, in other words, humankind. That's the most common meaning of the word in the Hebrew Bible. Second, it's inconsistent to take Genesis 3 literally when you're taking Genesis 1 non-literally, as a lot of people do. And there are one or two more reasons that I'll mention in the course of going through the passage. Particularly, we'll see how fruitful the assumption is. So let's have a look.
ויפל יהוה אלוהים תרדמה על האדם וישן ויקח אחת מצלעותיו ויסקור בשר תחתנה.
And he made fall, Yahweh the subject, Yahweh Elohim,
tardema.
So the root form is these letters here, and this one at the front makes it into a noun, and from the ah at the end we see that it's a feminine noun. Upon the man, and he slept. So here's a different word for sleep. I don't think any difference in meaning is intended here. And he took. We also see this verb sometimes with an L in front of it. Here the L is dropped. Achath mitzalhothau. His ribs. And in some Arabic languages, my rib means my close friend. So I guess it's a natural kind of thing to say. And again, this is one reason why I see it as symbolic. This is chosen because of its symbolic significance. And he closed up the flesh. So this here, the first approximation meaning of this word tachat is under, but here it comes to mean in place of, like put on. If it's like under or on top, it's like it's taking the place of it. So that's chapter 2, verse 21. This is all introductory to the story that we're going to look at. Ben Yahweh Elohim et hatzela asher lachach. So there is the word take with the L in front of it. Min ha'adam le'isha vayib'eh el ha'adam. So, and he made Yahweh Elohim. So this eth just means the object of the sentence, which is the rib. The object of the sentence is the one that receives the action. So God made the rib, which he took from the man made it into a woman, and he brought it to the man.
So interesting story, and notice the similarity in form. Oh, we don't have the word here. Ish is man and Isha is woman, and Adam will play on those two words in a minute. We'll see that. Verse 23. Wayomer Adam Zoth Para Haparam Etzem Meritzami Ubasar Mibatsari Lezoth Yikare Isha Ki Meish Lukahach Zoth. Notice the 3 times repeated Zoth. I think Adam's getting a bit excited. And he said, "Some man," this, and so here's where Adam's words begin. This, the time, this, finally, bone from bone my, and flesh from flesh my. To this, she will be called. The vowels here indicate that it's a passive. This is the root form of the verb, and this R vowel here with that one indicate that this is a passive, so that's why I've translated will be called woman. Ki from Isha. You see the similarity between these two words, Isha and Ish. Lukaha Zoth. So the form of the name, as I said in other lessons, is not seen as just a chance occurrence by the Hebrews or by people of other traditional cultures who don't have modern scientific linguistics that we have, which tells us that names are just an arbitrary label. But according to their belief, our name is significant, and here the significance is played on because "a" is also a suffix coming at the end of words in Hebrew, meaning indicating a direction. So the woman is taken from the man. So there is Ish and Isha. In translation, we're lucky in English that we have woman and man, so the two words do have a similarity, so it kind of works in English almost as well as the Hebrew. In other translations, like Jerome in his Latin and Luther in his German, they chose slightly unusual words to make a word play. But bone and flesh. So bone is the first approximation meaning of this word in Hebrew, but it can also mean essence, like inner essence. So if she is bone of my bone, it means like she is essentially like me. He's comparing her with the animals that God had previously brought to the man for him to name and to see if one of them might be a suitable companion for him, but he found they were all too different. But this one is like him in essence, and flesh of my flesh. So again, first approximation, flesh, like in the sense of meat, not such a common word this in modern English, where we often use the word meat in modern English, or muscle. But flesh of my flesh, because she was taken out of his flesh according to this story. But a second meaning of this word basar is kin. So she is like kin to me. When Laban met his nephew Jacob, he said, "You are my bone and flesh." That's Genesis 29:14. So it's meaning like you are my close relative. Also, we should say that man names woman indicates that she is expected to be subordinate to him, which is important background to what happens later. And we'll see that especially in chapter 3, verse 17. This is a comment made by Wenham in his commentary on Genesis And this is an example of where, as a modern Westerner, we don't necessarily get this, agree with it, and even when we do hear it, it sounds offensive to modern Western sensibilities. But if we want to properly understand what's going on here, we have to put that aside and we have to step into their worldview. And the fact is, in their worldview, he names the woman so that gives him a certain authority over her. But before we leave this verse, perhaps we should just note again the 3 times repeated zoth. So the writer has, I believe, put this in to indicate that Adam is pleased and excited to see his new wife. Al ken yagzav ish eth aviv ואת אמו ודבק באשתו והיו לבשר אחד ויהיו שניהם הורמים האדם ואשתו ולא יתבוששו יתבוששו והנחש היה ערום. Okay, so verse 24, upon this, or for this reason, Yagazav, for he forsakes a man, object, father his, and object mother his, and clings to. In is the first approximation meaning of this word, but it goes with this verb cling. So in English we'd say cling to wife his. Wahayu, and they are to. So this is a common way in English of saying they become, or they are. They are to, in other words, they become or they are basar echad, one flesh. This could mean that they are related, one flesh, become relatives, but it's also a pretty plain and open reference to the act of sex. The Bible isn't prudish. As for this leaving, in Israelite custom, the man didn't usually leave his parents, but the wife did. Therefore, Wenham suggests we just should translate forsake, not leave. He comments, in traditional societies like Israel, where honoring parents is the highest human obligation, next to honoring God, this remark about forsaking them is very striking. So then we come down to verse 25, and they were, the two of them, naked. It's a plural ending. Adam, the man, and wife his, and not, they were ashamed. Like innocent children, which are often seen naked in villages all around the world. And, I mean, small children, even in our society, obviously have no knowledge about shame, the shame and the embarrassment, we would say, in modern culture of nakedness. Interestingly, the NIV 2011 begins to use Adam here in verse 25. Previously it had just translated the man, but here they start to use Adam. Different versions do this in different places. The 1984, NIV 1984, continued to use the man and didn't start using Adam until 317. So that's a bit of a difficulty for translators. Every version seems to start using the name Adam in a different place, but the Hebrew is actually seamless. But of course, as soon as your translation uses the word Adam as a name with a capital letter, people think, oh, I know someone called Adam, and so they immediately think of them as two real individuals. This is a historical account of what happened to two real individuals. But the Hebrew like I say, is different. It's seamless all the way through, and we have to remember that the main meaning of this Hebrew word Adam is always mankind. So this is a story about a man and his wife, and the man's name is man. So it's a pretty strong indication that it's not a story about particular individuals, but it's a story about what happened to mankind and what happens to each of us individually. And now moving into chapter 3, these chapter divisions of course were put in much later, and they can sometimes interrupt the flow for us trying to understand the story, although this is obviously a new section but linked with the above, and in particular with this word arum, where hanahash, and the snake was cunning. So this word is almost identical to this other word up here, naked. So that's the plural ending, and here is the word cunning, as you can see, almost identical. Now, as I've said before, word plays in modern, probably in every modern European language, word plays would be made as jokes. But if you go back a little bit further in European custom, and if you go to other languages around the world, word plays are seen as having a significance. It's not just a chance occurrence that two words resemble each other. And clearly to the writer of Genesis here, this isn't not just a chance occurrence. He's deliberately using these two words that have very similar form. And in this case, well, I suppose I could say pause the video if you want to think what might be the significance of that. My understanding of it is that their nakedness and total naive innocence is contrasted with the snake's cunning. And this is again something that we see time and time again, how innocent and naive people are the victims of worldly wise and cunning people who come in and dupe them in various different ways. Just one more comment before we leave this. In the classification of unclean animals, the snake is the uncleanest, so to speak, making it the best candidate for an anti-God symbol, says Wenham. He's presented here as just one of the animals that God created, but in Revelation chapter 12 verse 9 and chapter 20 verse 2, he is identified with Satan, the crafty, cunning or crafty, we could say, individual who is pure evil, and he's about to dupe the defenseless and innocent couple.